I had a long discussion with somebody that had mentioned a property, and I explained to him, he may be doing work now, and it may be a year before he gets his work done, and there may be things on his yard that all said and done may or may not belong there. One thing I certainly make clear is I said, I think by the time this falls out, there's not going to be, you can keep inventory of your business there. I don't think that thing's going to be allowed, you know, and because that question was asked, well, do you think we'll be able to keep inventory there? It's like, I don't think it would be, but once again, I'm just giving my personal opinion. Well, as we went on, he talked about everything kind of fell, we've determined there's going to be a complaint. There are probably many things in the code, or excuse me, in the town that may not meet certain parts of the code way out, I mean, all the other code that we're not even going to discuss. As John mentioned, we aren't going to be the place, but there may be times when something's just so obvious that it has to be dealt with in a business being called in, and we're kind of in the process of doing that one now just to get an understanding of something. I don't think we need to have a police. I don't think anyone wants to have a police. I think we ought to have the code. I think that if it gets severe enough that there will be a complaint, and we can only do the best we can do. We can't not have a code and just leave it wide open. At the same time,
well, the neighbor to the Quonset could tell you that complaints don't feed the bullfrog. Because she's put up for years with those people being absolutely horrible neighbors, and she has complained.
Written signed complaints?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
photos,
Which sent me out,
videos.
Yeah.
which sent me out to
Right.
And you
investigate.
found them not really an issue?
Because when Eric gets there, the stuff is no longer there. Yet running trucks at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, Eric can't go down there every time they're running trucks at 3 o'clock in the morning, and so we say to ourselves, well, we can control this with a nuisance ordinance. Okay, when you have somebody who's really a jerk, they don't care if you complain.
Well, didn't they have the law behind them on that? This is where the attorneys met and all of a sudden,
Well, they were restricted. See, here's where you come into it. Yeah, they had the law on their side, but not. They had an attorney. They had a big dog attorney.
well, they produced the documents needed to justify what they were doing.
Right. But the people who understand, who live next to that property, say that was vacant for a year. So how can it be continuing use? They're like,
Well,
oh, well, it was never used for anything else.
okay, now you're
Okay, but-
talking big bucks to
Right.
let the courts decide.
Yeah, exactly, and we don't want to do that. We really don't want to do that, but I also see that if you don't have strong code and you don't shut the door now, you're dealing with more of that. Because complaint doesn't always, you know, I mean, what can Eric do? He can't go out there with a shotgun. So if you've got somebody who's running a business across the street from me and they're making a mess and they're not in code and I complain and Eric goes out and they say, in your face, what happens?
Then Eric issues a citation, they go to the judge.
And they keep doing with it. And they pay a fine and they keep doing
not
it.
that
no.
point tonight. Just like Joe was here tonight. I mean, that's kind of what would be happening. That would, I mean, the next day that they didn't after that, I mean, they would.
We've had folks here that have looked right at us and says, I'm not gonna comply. And so I say, that's great, because that gives me a direction and here's what's gonna happen. And so I tell them, I'll be here with the sheriff, we'll issue a citation, you'll go see the judge. You're gonna tell him you're not, the first thing you're gonna do is 90 days in jail and $3,000 fine.
So you feel comfortable with the complaint-driven idea, so putting an adequate home occupation code in place that will stop some of these things that we're seeing that are open violations, and then using it as complaint-driven. So if my neighbor calls and says, this guy across the street from me is parking all his asphalt equipment, it's smelly and it's noisy. And he puts that in writing and he gives it to Eric, and Eric's gonna go out and that guy's gonna move his stuff.
Yes.
This is,
This is
I
what we're
agree
seeing
with-
is gonna happen.
I agree with the mayor. He said that what we need to do is go through this code and just get a code. Might not be
But we
perfect.
can live with it.
But in case
It
you
won't
didn't
be
notice, when the public showed up and you had these business guys in here,
They were here.
they were here, you had Brett Waterman that handed us the
But there
stuff
it
and
is.
said,
I won't leave. I'm sorry.
this is how it should read. And then Joe Witt was saying, well, if you got all this acreage, we ought to be able to have buildings over here and all of this. And by the time you analyze that and digest what you were hearing from these business people, it was that the fox watching the hen house. They were kind of designing things to fit the situation that they could see coming down the road. You can talk to every one of these guys that has a business license that's operating. I'm not talking about the plumber that has 2 people that show up in a truck. I'm talking about guys that are really looking at, hey, I need to go into a commercial zone. I know that, but maybe I can try this first. Now that's just Kim Norris's thought. But the culture has changed. It's already through the business community in Daniel. I mean, it's a huge community. It's already through. That culture has changed. And these guys are already on notice and they're starting to say, hey, you know, we really don't want to be bad neighbors. We really don't want to be able to say, well, look, the town doesn't have a code, therefore we can do it. And you just go back in your house and quiet down. That culture's changed. And I think if we just simplify this the best we can, get something in here. I mean, I was talking to a plumber tonight, and I thought he would show up here. But he says, you know, I have 3 employees. I'm worried about this. You know, if I have to go find me some commercial property and do this and that, it's going to be a real burden for me. So I'm trying to work through this. And I looked at him and I said, well, okay, what happens if you've got 10 trucks and you fire them up and you smoke the neighbor out every morning? And he says, you know, at about that time, I think the business people have to look at the situation and say, it's time for me to move to a commercial zone. You had the same thing with Matt Peterson, if I get the last name right. He's the one that's trying to get this trucking business and be.
Oh, that was
Excuse me?
McAllister.
Mark Peterson.
Look at
Yeah.
McAllister.
Mark
I'll get
McAllister.
it.
You're getting
Just keep helping me. But, you know, he was checking it out to see, maybe I can get this into a commercial zone. Then the problem goes away. He was feeling that.
He was trying to do the right
And
things.
didn't see where it was going.
And
Yeah,
trying to
he
fit.
was. But at the same time, I don't think it's fair to him to let the cat out of the bag, and next thing you know, the guy that's selling the property is thinking, wow, this might have some potential, I'm gonna raise the price on Mark. But the culture's changed, that's my point. And all we have to do is make a good attempt here, and I'm surely not gonna take Joe Witt's, and if Joe was here, I'd be mentioning his name, because it's all public, it's in the public. But I'm not gonna take Joe Witt's idea of where I got 20 acres and so I can have 5 buildings and I'll tuck them away here and I'll run trucks in and out. And some way we can get a code to fit my property.
So for instance, I'll use that example. For right now, he's got X amount of machines on his property. He's building stuff, and he's doing stuff. But when that building stops, that'll be, in my opinion, there'll be some probably violations of all that equipment because he's taking it out every day to go on jobs or every other day or every week or something. And so, once again, the residential zone is not designed for that purpose.
Yes, my question to you on that particular individual, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he has a commercial lot somewhere where he's parking his
Oh,
trucks in another location.
very possible.
But it might be a little more convenient for him if he can move them into Daniel without a lot of
I
static.
would agree.
His problem
Especially
is,
if he can write the code.
his problem is he built too nice of a barn and now he has to build another one, to put his
Put
stuff
the
in
hay in.
it. Should have gone in this one, but it's too nice.
Yeah.
to put
Well,
in there.
I don't want to take it to an individual discussion.
I know, I'm just saying, that's kind of what happens and then.
Yeah, I saw that too.
You know, I got through reading through what everybody's been working on here and looking at the red lines and everything else. And the only thing I could come up with is in the purpose, let's just put that all the town codes must be followed by the licensee. That's the only thing after I got through with all
I think
this.
we've gone through this a ton, and this is what we went through in planning commission and recommended to the council that they approve it. And I really think we can go ahead with these changes, and we're still gonna have some other issues to deal with, but I don't see anything wrong with these.
No, I read through it for the first time really carefully, but I just don't see what we can do with all the people that aren't, how did these people get business license? We had this in the book. I mean, the
Yeah, but
fence
we
guy.
messed up.
Okay, we messed up, so now we gotta kinda go back, cause this makes sense, cause, I mean, a home occupation is a small, self-employed business ran by the homeowner. Done. There
Okay.
must be 10 businesses along 3,000 that doesn't fit that.
And there's 10 more that do, and they're okay.
What now?
And then there might be 10 other businesses that fit that, and they'd be okay.
But they're the ones you don't see, cause they're
No,
actually following the
because-
rules, they're in their
because
house.
Yeah, they've got a trailer and a
Which is where they're
pickup
supposed
truck,
to
and
be.
they're not.
There's
they're
no
not-
exterior buildings, you're not
Yeah.
supposed to be using any exterior buildings, you guys wrote this, it's good. But we gotta enforce it. How are we gonna do that?
See, and that's my point. I totally agree with what Jay said. I think that it is pointless, and I think it's naive on our part to think that if we write the code, that it's gonna have compliance, I think, and that the compliance is going to follow. I've been in various businesses, like I said earlier, clear back to the 1970s. And my experience with human nature is that very few things will flow like water does downhill. Most things have to be pumped. And when we're dealing with people who've had established places for years, I think that it's going to come to enforcement. And I think that once we do come up with the ordinance, then the lid is going to come off the jack-in-the-box. And what's going to come out of the jack-in-the-box is going to be extremely expensive litigation. I think we need to be prepared for that if we're going to do it. I don't think that just writing the code is going to solve the problem. If we all in this room agree on a code and we put it out there and if it's enacted, that's great, but there's going to be the majority of those who are out there who are causing the problems now are going to continue to cause the problems, and it's just going to escalate.
So one thing I would add, change to that is, I do believe that if Eric has a signed complaint, it will not be an issue because he will take care of it. Now,
So then we will revisit it if that happens.
I don't know if we'll revisit it much, but he does his job, as far as I'm concerned, fairly well. If he gets that letter, he's gonna go take care of it. If he finds it's there in violation after the determination, we go to the steps. I, as the mayor for the town, we're gonna follow this. He'll get the instruction, he will do it. I don't doubt that that will happen.
I think it's going to be expensive, Mayor.
You could be, but, but it does come down to the complaint. So once again, not every violation is gonna give you getting picked on or not getting a compliance officer, but you're very well right. There may be some people after we finish that still don't comply and they say, but I don't think my gut tells me they're not gonna win over a municipality's ordinance that was thoroughly discussed and all Ingles thought about and implemented.
That's
It-
why
it
we put
depends
these
on their
codes
lawyers.
out there.
And
Agreed.
And when the one happened next door to me, they were one out of the entire neighborhood. What was there, 20 people at least who had gone into the county and signed complaints and were very, very vocal about that what's going on there is not okay. And tooth and nail, all the way down to the very last point. And it did not go down, at the end of it, it did not go down in the way that was beneficial to the neighborhood. They were part of the Old Boy Network, and they were given a complete and total exemption for another piece of property, or another spot on their property, and it just went on, it's just at a different location. And I think there's gonna be a lot more people than we're prepared to deal with.
I think a lot of
Isn't
the
that why we
business-
write code, is so that we can be backed up legally?
Okay.
But
Here's,
it doesn't happen for free.
here's the
No.
thing though, all this does is clarifies the home occupation. It doesn't do anything for the other problems. We're not changing the code for the other problems, it's already there. And if we did change it, then we grandfather in what's been in the past, perhaps. I mean, if the code allowed it, but we don't anyway. So I kind of feel like it's a good thing to approve this because it does clarify and help the home occupation portion of it. It is not going to solve the other issue at all, but I think this does help clarify home occupation.
You're always
Every
gonna have
business owner
people.
that was in here the other night, I don't think that they're wanting to spend $100,000 and get in the law suit. whether they win or lose. I don't think they're wanting to do that.
You're talking about the.
I'm talking
The
about
ones
the-
up by Stephanie, is that?
I'm talking about any one of these people that came in here, they're not really wanting to get in a big, expensive lawsuit. But they're gonna get away with what they can until that code right there shows up, and until their neighbor that they really like is mad at them. Then they've gotta redo this. I think
The
that's.
code's
what's-
already there. This
That's
is
it.
not the code that deals with that at all. This is just home
Isn't
occupation.
that what changed by others?
The other code
It's
already.
been there for 10 years.
It has. And so I don't think that we're gonna do any good with the rest of it, other than I think the public hearing actually did a lot of good because it raised awareness. And maybe made some people a little bit worried about what they were doing and maybe think twice. The ones that are real problems don't care. The ones that wanna be good neighbors do. And I think that we'll see some changes because of it. And maybe we need to continue those discussions, but I think that the changes here are just make sense to clarify what we do for home occupations, make it a little easier to read, it doesn't change any of the other stuff, so.
You're always gonna have people who think they're entitled. And you're always gonna have people who, no matter what the code says, are gonna try to get away with something. And I feel that, like Jay, we're gonna have to police this for a while.
Yeah.
We put the code in for home occupation, and that's great. Let's make sure that the home occupation, which is in the home, is complying. And
Or
then
they
we'll
don't get a
deal with
business
the
license.
commercial stuff. You know, I mean, we apparently have an issue here, and I've been listening to you guys, and I missed all of the public comments and things. But from what I can see in our town, we have a problem where the commercial is encroaching on the residential. And that's another issue that we're gonna have to face and deal with, and we're gonna have to stop. We're gonna have to police it. But right now, it's like Gary said, we're dealing with the home occupation. And I believe, like the rest of them, that this code that we have right now that we've written is good and will help us get to where we want to be on our 20-year plan. But we are going to have to police it.
Well, and one way to police it, if no one's in a rush, the thing that can be done better is when the applicant renews, there's stuff that we haven't been doing fully because there's just not enough time for everybody to do it, and quite honestly, that's part of it. We can do a better job of having that applicant come in, it's like, oh, you know, you started out in your little bedroom and now you've got this whole thing out here, what's going on? We send, you know, so each applicant gets, you know, maybe we just give a new code out, or, you know, every time an applicant renews, they understand the code, and then we have the opportunity to bring them in and discuss that, and that'd be time for clarity.
So are we talking about being firm enough that if somebody comes in for a business license, they do not meet code, we deny them a business license?
Yeah.
Well,
Is
that's
that
up
what
to
you're
5
talking about?
guys on the council that would be in that position to do
Yeah.
that.
You know, so when you.
And indeed, we have denied it.
Whenever you're building a larger building, I mean, the county, and it's still us, you gotta notify all your neighbors within 500 feet.
Well, but a business license doesn't require that, and this
should.
code doesn't require it.
When I got mine in Bountiful, we had to get signed notification from all
But
of
our
the,
code does not require home occupations to
It
get
can.
signed.
it should.
That's what I'm.
And I agree with you, John. I think we need to make a determination, well, is it a business license, or is it separate,
Yeah.
or whatever? I think that's a very valid point.
But I think what we're talking about tonight is we want to get this home occupation code in place. We want to look at what we've done with it, what we've tinkered with it, what we've recommended with it, and approve it, since we're all sitting here, and approve, are we in a position to approve that? Did we tell the public that we were going to approve
well.
the changes to this code?
I would just think that at this point, I mean, we certainly can make a vote because it is a public meeting and we can only vote on the agenda items, but as far as approval, I don't know if we're, I mean, we have red lines here, I have notes where red lines are at, I have positive notes and negative notes, meaning for that issue. But whatever goes on this evening, I have a feeling Eric's probably gonna give some clarity at the end of this discussion on what we've been discussing, so. Anyway,
What if I don't?
Well, and if you read through the one, if you read
It'd
through
be a
the
first.
one that Mr. Waterman handed to us last time, essentially what he did is tightened and took out the red line issues on that first page, 2501, 02, and 03. Did a pretty good job on those. Just cleaned them up and tightened them up, took out the extra stuff that we had already redlined. So as far as that page, I think we're in good shape. 03 on the line items, I think is the same kind of thing. He just took out what we had redlined and gave us a tighter version, a cleaner copy.
Well, a looser version, I think.
Yeah.
Looser,
Yeah, I
well,
second
he
that.
took out the
Yeah.
stuff that we redlined.
This
did.
is, this is the Fox
So
and the
we
hen.
had, we
Yeah.
had already redlined it though. So we were talking about taking it out,
We was,
and he just took it out.
he did, but he didn't get all the notes that we added.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he significantly loosened the code in terms of what you can and can't do.
I agree.
I wasn't seeing that.
See, that culture that I mentioned is already starting to happen. The mayor went down and checked out a business, just because he says it's getting to look more and more commercial. I'd like to go down and talk with him and see what's up and what's going on. So we're already making this transformation, but we really do need to have this
Well, then let's
approved.
write it, let's do it, because that's the point we're at. We've talked about it now for months. We need code in writing, we need to stop talking.
Okay, if that's the opinion, then we probably have 3/4 of it here, and we can go through, whether it's tonight or whatever, each paragraph. Yep, that paragraph looks great. You want to add one from somebody?
But before we do that, this code really mixes up business license and home occupation permit. If we could decide we're gonna have two, or if we want them together,
One.
I think that would help us clarify this code, because it talks of both.
It does.
And so, as you guys are talking here, I hear three different versions going on here. I hear a home occupation, I hear a commercial license, and I hear self-employment.
Too complicated. Don't fool with it right now.
I like that.
That's what I'm hearing, you guys are discussing. You have three different things. You have
Yeah.
home occupation, that this code we're dealing with right here. Self-employment, people that are working, is not written, they're not spoken to in this. These people that we're talking about, the plumbers.
Yeah.
They need a business license somewhere.
But
They
we
do,
don't have
that's
both.
what I say, I'm hearing three different, distinct, three different areas, like.
But I'm not saying those three fit into what we're talking about.
Self-employed
This
is,
is home occupation.
Yeah.
self-employed is a
That's
whole
only
different.
one of those. We have two other
So-
items there that obviously need a code.
So why don't we take care of self-employment, or home occupation, and then if we feel like, I mean, right now, the others aren't allowed in the code.
I was
We
gonna
have to
say,
open up the code.
Are they allowed?
So if we decide we need to
I don't know
make
that
that happen.
self-employment's not allowed in the code.
I
I'm
didn't-
amazed.
No, it's not. It's not, but the activities that a lot of the self-employed people are doing on their property is not allowed in the code.
Correct.
So
What's your
So-
definition of self-employment?
I'm saying anyone who works for themselves. I mean, basically.
drive
What
feel
about,
like I'm an employer.
what about a manufacturer's rep? That's what my dad was for years and years and years.
Yeah, but what business does he do?
Wire
on
and
his-
cable,
at his
electrical
home?
wire and cable,
Say, but what business does he do at his home?
nothing. I mean, he
So he doesn't
he
need
makes
it.
phone calls, he has an office, he talks to people, he does quite a bit there, but he does not have anybody that comes in.
There's
So
no
self-employment, I
inventory.
think, is totally different than either a home occupation or commercial.
That's what I'm
Self-employment
hearing.
almost doesn't look like it needs
Yeah.
a business.
No,
license.
I don't think
Oh,
so.
I think it does, because then you have a self-employment person that pulls in with 10 trailers.
Yeah.
See, there's your problem.
So and that's why I hear what you guys are saying is three different areas. That's why I wrote them up.
Size dictates everything.
Size distance, size is certainly a condition that would do both of those, all three of those
And I
actually.
think it's basically self-employment means it's a one-man show.
I don't-
Which is what a home occupation is.
And that way you don't have 10 trailers in unless they can put them all behind each other and pull them in with one truck.
Well, I think you could define that by IRS statute.
So Eric, do you think down the road we should write a different
FICA?
self-employment code?
Well, I think that a
Medicare.
lot of those folks that we had in here and the examples that we've heard fall under that category.
Yeah,
So I think that that probably needs to happen before.
before.
Yeah, it sounds like
So they do-
self-employment. We're trying to put self-employment in home occupation.
So
It
it
doesn't
almost
It's
has
fit.
to
it's not.
It
doesn't
almost
fit.
has to be small
No, that's why I'm
business
saying
rather
self-home
than self-employment.
occupation, move to the next one. Because we're battling this different
Right.
definition.
So I'm throwing this out, and so, and I'm pretty much in agreement with you. But, so we have commercial business going, so we approve this and it throws out everything else out.
Well, no, this doesn't
Out of
really,
this.
this just clarifies home occupation. Those businesses would
So
be
that's all
thrown
it's
out if
allowed.
we followed code exactly now. There's nothing in the
This is
code
all
that
Correct.
addresses them.
Correct.
So,
So the commercial business in an RA doesn't work, and so they're automatically, those people we know are in violation, they get a copy of the new code, here's what home occupation is. That's what they're all under currently, then they have nowhere to go per se, as far, and they certainly can't do their, the whole point is not to have them do commercial business in the RA zone.
Right. But we're not changing their status by making these changes to the home occupation.
Mayor, do we
So-
have commercial businesses already in Daniel?
Mike Peterson's gonna be one of them, we,
What about Suburban Propane? That's no way in the world, that's a.
But they're in the
home
commercial
occupation.
zone.
that's not a home occupation, that's commercial.
Okay, so we do have, within the township, we do have provision for commercial businesses, correct?
Yeah, and we have some there. There's
We have commercial
Suburban
zoning.
Propane and
in the commercial
Davis
zone.
Concrete would be in the commercial zone.
So are we gonna limit that?
Yeah.
Commercial businesses to commercial zones?
Yeah.
That would seem to make sense, wouldn't it?
That's kind of the direction we're trying to get, that belongs there.
That's
Right,
size.
right.
Home occupations belong in homes, and all these other things that
Doesn't
have
fit
that's
in
gone
here?
past that point belong in commercial zone.
Okay, so we've already got that. We're really not in violation of anything commercial. We just need to get them into the commercial
And a
zone.
self-employed person that's working by themselves, or a father and son team that's got a trailer and a pickup truck they haul off every day to go do a job on site, you know, that's one thing. But then if you got 2, 3, 4
But that's it.
buildings in the back, houses and everything else, then there's the size. That's their difference.
You know, when we talk about this is why everybody says, well, look, you can have one-ton truck. That's because this code is speaking to a home occupation.
Yep.
That's why it says that.
So Eric, if that's the case, then McAllister, is that his name? He's already in violation of that if he's bringing 6
Oh,
semi
yeah.
trucks.
Yeah, and he knows it, and that's why he's looking for that other, because he doesn't want to be a problem.
And any plumber or electrician who's more than a one-man shop.
Or like, the
Well,
next-
no.
If he's got 2 or
No.
3 crews,
He can have 2 or 3 crews. If they're family, I believe.
but
he
if
feels
there's 3
self-employed.
trucks that are parked there, he's already in violation of it.
yeah.
If they're
Of
bigger than
what?
As the code's
A
written.
plumber's truck, an
Well,
electrician's
this is
truck.
home occupation. We're
Yeah.
talking now about a self-employed person.
Well, now we're talking about making them all compliant.
But they're happening in an RA zone, which they shouldn't be happening in the
Yes.
first
The
place.
self-employed?
Well,
They're really not
Which one are
self.
we talking about?
there you go.
Self-employed.
Which
Yeah.
one are you talking
In my
about?
mind, in my
You
mind.
guys don't think self-employed will happen in the RA5 zone?
Home business is you got people coming in where you're doing work and delivering.
Out of the home.
Mhm.
You're self-employed, they've got a truck, they've got their tools and that, but they
All
go
their
pick up
stuff's off
equipment.
If,
We
if
don't
you-
have
They go on the job
But
site.
our code does not,
if you've got an electrician
Recognize
with
that
3
case.
trucks, he's way more than self-employed.
Yeah.
He is an employer.
If
Right.
he's got him and his 2 boys going, he's self-employed.
He's
By
actually-
state definition.
He's actually employing the 2 boys.
I know
He
it's
is,
family.
he is an employer,
It's
and that
family.
puts him in the category of commercial.
Blood relative by state standards makes him not have to be.
Unless we put that in this code, that you can have 3 trucks and you can employ X number of people.
You mean in the self-employed code?
In self-employed, that's one guy.
I don't know about that. I don't always agree with Eric, but on this I actually really do.
I was just listening to what everybody was
Yeah,
saying.
and
You
I-
guys identified 3 areas.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense, and I think we need to write the self-employed as we write the home occupation.
why?
Because I think most of the people that are the McAllisters, the plumbers, these guys, they're
Right,
self-employed.
but by changing the home occupation, we're not changing their status. I think we need to deal with it, but I think we can do this first because they're not allowed now. All we're going to do is loosen the code if we're gonna do anything with it. So I don't see why we can't get home occupation done and out of the way so we
Well,
can
we're-
clarify it and then we move on to
In a sense, we're looking to
self-employed.
make all these big changes with home occupation, I think, and kind of change the
Okay,
town a
then
little bit.
let's not change home occupation. I don't think we're making anything other than clarifications.
Yeah,
Did it
that's all
change?
we
I'd say
do.
small changes, I don't know about lots of big changes.
Yeah, so when,
Clarifications.
what do we do when a plumber comes up for a renewal?
Do we allow that in
You say-
RA5?
you know,
That's what I'm asking.
you're out of compliance with the
With the
zoning.
present code.
We haven't gotten any complaints, but we can't guarantee this is gonna go on in the future.
So we give them permit?
Or we give them a time frame to correct it.
Yeah,
Bad ideas.
Okay, Gary is saying that we need two different codes. One code for the home occupation, one code for the self-employed.
or not.
What he's saying is, let's get the home occupation in place. Then let's work on the self-employed code, and then we can bring the self-employed people into code and under,
That's attempting to close loopholes, Diane.
well, isn't that what he's saying? Am I
No, what I'm saying
misunderstanding
is-
him?
Do this.
There is a home occupation code. There is no self-employed or commercial in the residential zoning.
Period.
So right now, they're all out of compliance.
That's my point.
So I'm saying, fix this, and then we can deal with the others and say, do we want to make exceptions, or do we want to leave it like it is?
I'm just trying to clarify, if we do this, then everybody's out of compliance.
No, they are now. This isn't changing whether they're out of compliance or not at all.
I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying that, boy, back to Jay's comment is, here comes enforcement.
No, I don't think that's the case at all. I think this is a clarification of the home occupation code. And any of those people that are in compliance with the home occupation code, I don't think we're pushing anybody out of compliance.
So a plumber or electrician with two boys working for him, and he's got 3 trucks, one truck for him, one for his 2 boys.
Mhm.
Is he in compliance?
No,
That's my point.
Not as it's
and he
written.
won't, he isn't now, and he won't be after we change the code.
That's
So
fine.
we haven't changed his status.
So,
So when he comes up for his business license renewal, we say, here's the copy of the code, and you're not in compliance. So
and
we're
you don't
not
get a
issuing
business
license.
license.
And we don't want to do that.
We don't?
No. Well, I don't. I think there's lots of people in our town that run good businesses out of their homes, and they might have a few plumbing trucks, and they might have a few this and that. But I have no problem with that to an extent.
So are you saying then that we need to take care of those people and the self-employed people with the home occupation code?
No, I think like it's been mentioned, they're different codes, but I think it would be insightful to kind of put them together and write them together, formalize them together so we don't have big loopholes.
So, okay, we've just spent 3 to 4 months on the home occupation. Now let's go spend 3 to 4 months on the self-employed, and then let's merge them
I don't
together.
think we can call
John,
it self-employed.
No, not that at all.
Point of curiosity, where would you put a plumber with 2 boys working for him? If he's not self-employed, if he's not home occupation, what do we define him as?
I think we define self-employed such that a guy like that might fit that area.
And we allow that?
To an extent, yeah.
So I think
We
you
can't be
define it as, if the 2 boys live in the same residence with him, it's great.
Well,
They're coming from
even if he
outside.
has 2 employees that are not family, I think
Then I'm
I'm
not
fine with that.
As
I'm
long
not
as they
fine
don't
with
come to the.
Well, and that's certainly
residence.
something you can look at on the self-employed, we can limit size.
Yeah,
We're not have to be stuck to blood.
we can discuss
limit size.
details when we get to these codes, but I think if we have a big plan, it will help us
I
write
think
these
this will
individual
substantially
codes.
change if you're trying to write self-employment into this
Yeah, we're
document.
gonna have
Yeah.
to
I don't
redo
think
this
we
whole
want to
thing.
write it into this document.
Well, I think we, if I hear those 3 things, we either have to write a self-employed one, or else we have to incorporate it in this.
No, I don't
Let me
think
let me ask
we
a
do.
question, you keep saying self-employed, if that self-employed is doing commercial business, whether it's self-employed or not, is it under self-employment or is it under commercial business?
Small business.
See, self-employment, we need to understand what
The
the
definition is everything.
Exactly.
And so if we're all talking what we think
are
that
other
self-employment
towns
is,
doing?
It's a one-man
I
operation.
don't think they have this problem with that.
Well, I think they do.
I think they do, matter of fact,
And-
if I come here and
and I don't-
if Eric's Masonry, if Stonecutter Construction came here today, I would look at this and say, I don't qualify for this, I'm under self-employed, I don't need this. I'm
But see, even
self-employed.
your home occupation people are
Yeah, but
self-employed.
after you've read the rest of the code, what would your opinion be?
I'm still the same, I pull home a mixer, it sits out back,
Don't
But,
get me.
yeah,
but there's nothing in the residential
Yep.
zoning that says you can do that.
I mix up a batch of mud and I plant some fence posts, that's suddenly is my agricultural use.
It's true.
And that's
But,
fine.
and here's the whole point, even though Eric's gonna get around the code, that I think that we need to foster self-employment. Those are the folks that live here. They came to this meeting.
That's what you said.
These are the people we need to foster.
But
We're
there's
not out
also-
to shut everybody
Okay.
down.
Here's the deal that I'm a little concerned about. We say, okay, here's property here, and we're going to let people run their businesses here because they can't afford a commercial property. And so what have you done? You've just lowered the property value of the adjoining pieces. So, for example, a year ago, someone came in for a building, or a business license. And he said, well, it's not a problem because I'm going to put all my stuff in my backyard. You won't see it. And the council said, great, you can do it. So now, the house is here. It's further away from my house and the neighbor's house. And here's all the junk. And all the employees drive back here and park during the day and come back at night and talk and yell and turn their cars on. And the county brings their garbage truck in here to the dumpster and unloads, which, you know, if this is commercial zone, this has got to have a fence, this has got to have a fence around the dumpster.
Yep.
We tell this guy, you can't do this in the commercial zone.
Or
But
residential.
residential zone, we're fine with it.
Yeah, and that's where the gap comes.
And we have a sign ordinance that says you can have a 2 by 4 foot sign, and our businesses are good at that. But I can have a snowmobile trailer that I can put in my front yard that's a 20 by 10 foot sign for my business. But it's just a snowmobile trailer. So I think,
That's big issues there.
I think they
But none
are.
of those are addressed in this.
I agree.
And
But I'm saying, I don't think our code allows any of this. And if we want to allow some of the self-employment stuff, we're going to have to put some allowances in. Because the way it's written, at least the way I read it, in this and in the zoning, the permitted uses in an RA5 zone, none of this
Doesn't
fits.
qualify.
And maybe we ought to have, when we do some of this stuff, write in the intention of this, of what this zoning is to be.
Well, when you've got people like this neighbor that Gary has,
See, that's,
they just blow right through this kind of stuff.
yeah,
because
and
they're
that's
jerks.
not the intent of that zoning.
So they don't
Well,
care
the
about the
intent-
intent
they don't care
either.
about intent.
The ones next to me never cared
Their
about any of
intention
it.
is to make money.
And do it whatever,
That's
however
right.
it impacts anybody.
So there's
That ain't right.
huge piles of junk, you know, which you could call,
And I'll go one
Work
step
stuff.
further. On the 4th of July, they have 50 people come over and shoot this stuff off and start the field on fire. It's even beyond what you
my
said.
field's green, there's not.
So I don't think we're making a lot of
Yeah.
progress because we're all sharing personal stories. So we gotta make some progress here. Do we think we want to have separate permits for these three things? Let's answer that
Yeah.
question and decide.
Okay, then before we answer that, let me just say, for me, do we want a residential zone for houses and residents, or do we just want a hodgepodge of different things that can be in a residential zone? To me, I think we need to have clarity, and we need to have residents, and commercial doesn't exist and shouldn't exist in residential zones, and that's why there is commercial zones. And if they're business, if they're self-employed, I don't really care if they're self-employed, and if they're doing commercial business, it's commercial business, whether it's a,
That's
I
right.
mean, that's just the fact. So you could try to zip under a self-employment rule, but if they're doing commercial business, it's commercial. That does not belong in a residential zone. So that's what I believe is what we're trying to accomplish here. Whether we do it by all three is great for me, or any other way, but the point being that we have zoning, and we have resident zoning, we have commercial zone. Commercial belongs there, not in our residential zone.
And that's commercial.
Well,
But we're allowing it.
well, if we're
And
allowing
there have
it,
been complaints.
Okay, so
Well,
on
I'm
these
just
three,
saying, if we're going to allow commercial in the residential zones, they should have to follow the same requirements we require in the commercial zone. I'm not saying that I want it, but I'm just saying, if they think that this needs to be commercial, they can try and have a rezone. That's all how the process works.
so do we want to have these three separate items, or do we want to consolidate home occupation and self-employment? Can we take a vote on that or decide that right now?
Gotta be separate.
Well, definition for a home occupation is a small self-employed business. That is a definition, and
Well, maybe we could change its name.
so maybe we need to
Business.
change, I mean, I'm saying,
You
we've
can
already
have
got it.
home
Home occupation is
occupation
small
business.
self-employed business. That's the
That's a
definition.
corporation, that's a limited liability company, that's self-employed.
Maybe, I guess, the easier question is, do we want to allow plumbers and a few trucks and stuff like that in our residential zones? Maybe it's that easy.
Yes, we do. They're gonna follow that right there, and if they're not following this, and if they become a nuisance, and if they get too many employees, then we'll take care of it.
Okay,
And
so-
that's where it's going now.
So right now, Kim, you can't have a truck and stuff and run a business with this home occupation.
Or
Yes,
employees.
right there.
Yeah.
You can have one
Can't do
commercial
that.
vehicle, maybe
So
allowed. It's
if
right
we
there.
adopt just this, we're not having plumbers and electricians or whatever in our town.
Well, I
Yeah,
can't wait
it's right
to
here.
drive around and see how many people are gonna get eliminated that have truck signs on
Yeah.
their trucks. It's gonna be awesome.
No, I'm
Because
not saying
obviously
you
you
can-
ain't gonna
You
be
can
able to
have a
have a
commercial
sign,
truck,
your own
number
work
D.
truck home or
You
nothing.
can, I'm just
You
saying,
and you will be done. Well,
I'm
be
just saying
history.
when, you know, it's blatantly parking the snowmobile trailers in the front yard.
It's their front yard, they can park where they want there.
Okay, well then, why can't I put a big sign up in my front yard?
Put a big sign up.
Code won't let it.
Code won't let me.
But they could, why can't they park what they want in their driveway or
You
their
can if
yard?
it doesn't have a big sign on it.
Well, I'm
You
not
can't
saying
have your
that they
trailer
can, and
painted?
I'm not,
That's
Well,
painted
white,
with
or
whatever they
black,
want.
I'm not
but
saying
with the
that
big
they
sign.
That's
can.
not in a code saying it has to be a certain.
That's
Okay.
true.
The
Yeah.
thing
It can just be whatever.
The thing I'm seeing that Gary, the point that Gary has made, I hear what you're saying about the snowmobile trailer. You're right, it's their yard, it's their trailer.
It's
But
not
by
public.
putting their business name on it, they've created it as a business vehicle. It makes it a better write-off, but it is now a business vehicle. So they have chosen to change the category. But the part that I'm with Gary on in this way is, if we are going to allow people to put something back in the back, which is now in their neighbor's, under their neighbor's bedroom window, and it's a dumpster, and it's employees, and it's cars, then they ought to have some kind of compliance as far as a privacy fence, or hours of occupation, or, you know, something to do with the dumpster, so that the neighbors aren't having to deal with this stuff.
I'm just saying even, it has to be closer to your own house than it is to any of your neighbors.
Yeah, something like that. Put it under your window.
Well, I understand that, but
Yeah, that
I'm
part.
saying, how many people out here, as you've seen how many, moved out here for a specific reason?
Because Daniel will let them do anything they
No,
want.
they came out because we lived in town, we wanted acreage.
Yeah.
We wanted to be able to put Eric's mixer on it. We was
Right.
running his, and like he said, he was running his own business for him and his boys.
And I moved out
And-
here because I wanted it residential and agricultural. That's what it was zoned. And it's what I'd like to see it continue, but now I'm hearing from the business owners, well, you guys cut hay at night. Well, that's because it's a residential zone and it's allowed. I'm not breaking the code. They change the code, then I'll have to deal with it, but I'm hearing all the complaints, well, everybody's farming, so I'm like, okay, would you rather have 25 houses in your backyard or a hayfield? It's your choice, because that's what it's gonna come down to.
And I'll be leaving here in a few minutes, but when it comes down to the commercial and the self-employed, we obviously have to define it, because I know Pam we have a definition there, but we either accept that definition or change it, but whatever that definition ends up being. I don't see, I see certainly businesses and some smaller ones in the home. It's the definition that's going to explain everything, whether it's a home occupation or not. Commercial business does not belong in residential that hasn't. I would love to bring my business, sell my ground, and bring it to my yard. Who wouldn't like to do that? If they can't afford the right property, why not bring it to your house? That shouldn't be in the residential zone.
So Chip, just let me clarify, so you're saying we shouldn't have plumbers and electricians?
No, I'm saying we should, but there should be some I believe
Limits on what
there's
they
limits
can
on
do.
how and much and things. I think that we ought to let the folks then be as less restrictive as we can, but also try to keep to the spirit. And those who abuse the spirit, then that's the ones that might be in violation. But no, I'm not saying we should have
Maybe
all of
we
them.
could
We should
have
have all
something
of them.
in
It's just the
there
size.
to go along with that, something to the effect of a nuisance. If your business employee becomes a
Hey,
And
nuisance to your neighbor.
Sorry.
and I don't disagree with Chip either on that. I
Sorry.
think we need to be
No, you
reasonable. But I'm just saying, right now, the way the code's written, none of it's allowed. We're not changing that by changing this code. We need to go back and say, what do we want to enforce? what do we want to allow, and put some guidelines in the code to help people know what they can and can't do, and then be willing to enforce
Yeah.
what we don't want to have done.
That's right.
There's the outline right there.
And so that's why I'm saying,
That's it.
let's get the home occupation stuff out of our way, because we keep mixing this all together, and it's confusing everybody, including
Every
the
discussion,
citizens of the town. Every discussion that makes them, how many hours long? Anyway, let's get this one out of the way, and then let's take the issue to go forward, and it'll probably fall on the planning commission again to start it out.
No, it will.
And-
It's straight right over there, just send it there.
Could we change
only
the?
because you guys are smart.
No.
Hey, face it, we got the best minds in the town here. I mean,
Free
this is
minds.
it. We're in trouble with
So
it.
can we
are in trouble.
change, instead of having the word home occupation, do we have to have those words? Can we have small self-employed business code? I mean,
Let's do home occupation.
Well,
Let's-
it
I think
doesn't- I don't want the
we're
word
back to
one
this
code.
though, we're back to
Yes.
this. Do we need those three areas, or don't we?
Yes, yes.
Does
do we
everybody
wanna write
agree
We
any
we
need them
more code?
defined.
I don't wanna
I
write
think
this
we can do
code.
two.
You think we can do two?
I do. I
And
think
which
if
two
you-
of those three are?
I think you've got to have your commercial code for your commercial zones, because
Okay.
we have commercial zones.
Yeah,
Right.
and I
And
think
I
ours is
really have
actually
that.
pretty good.
I think if we write our home occupation appropriately, it could not be called home occupation, because obviously home occupations don't exist.
No, they do exist.
Well, they do, but
Yeah, they do.
we want to
Already
include
said
some
that
other,
most of the
There was
people in
sep-
this town with home occupations are not
the
compliant.
plumber.
Most are
Well,
not.
you
Most
have
are.
people
Right.
come to their house and the job is performed.
So couldn't we
there.
categorize them under our small business code, which is going to be self-employed? It's just a different name for the same thing. That's what I said.
Could be.
We just don't call it home occupation, because we're going to accept that people are gonna be bringing their plumbing truck home,
Right.
parking it in their yard.
How many plumbing trucks do you want to let come home?
Well, that'll be when we, that's
That'll
not
be
where
when we
we
get to
are.
that one.
That's not now.
But if,
So-
if we agree that we need three,
No.
if we don't, then we have to address it now.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, I agree with
If you don't agree that we need these three different areas, then we need to address it in the home occupation code.
So if we talk about 3 sections, could we have 3 different fee schedules? So your home
Absolutely.
occupation is spending a
Yeah.
whole lot
Yeah.
less than the guy who's not having a dumpster
So-
inspection.
And that's what it
let's-
should be.
We can get the home occupation one knocked out. I think our commercial one is pretty good as it
Pretty good.
is. I don't
It's
think
already
it's
one.
failed us so far.
So far?
So far,
I mean, we've
With our
gone,
two
we've
solar
gone through
businesses?
so far.
a few projects with that one, and I think it's worked out okay.
So would you define this one that you drew on the board as a commercial,
Yes.
legitimate commercial?
Like I
I
said,
would,
there
I
are-
would too.
There are 4 or 5 employees that bring their cars back there and park all
And
day.
if that is a commercial being operated in residential, and they intend to continue on that, then we as a town are gonna have to enforce that.
Yes.
Exactly, but we as a town need to decide what we want to allow and what we don't. And I think what the mayor said there,
True point.
we don't want to have this hard, just none whatsoever, because you do want someone that's self-employed plumber or electrician be able to park the truck
Or
in the
she would bring
driveway.
his truck home.
But at what point does that become too
commercial.
big or become commercial? And that's the hole in our code. I
If
think,
a guy has one employee, is he now commercial?
I
That'll be
don't
our
know,
code.
that's what we've got to figure out.
Okay, so can we at least make that decision so that we've decided we're going to write 3? We're gonna tighten up home occupation or clean up
I
home
think it's
occupation?
just cleanup, I think it's clarification is all
So,
it really
okay,
is.
clarify
Okay,
home
So
occupation.
before we go there, by a show of hands, do we need 3 codes? Against?
The commercial code's already out there, it's fine.
It is.
Okay, but we need-
We're agreeing that we
keep
need
it.
Keep
self-employed
it, yeah, it's already
Commercial.
there, we're not
Everyone
doing
wants-
it.
As
Yeah,
a,
not
as a
working on it.
separate entity.
as a separate code. It will read
I will
different.
change this up for discussion. The self-employed and home occupation and commercial, we already have a commercial zone ordinance.
Mhm.
And so whether we tighten it up or not, we already have that. We have that going on in the residential, so we fine tune the residential, but that doesn't say residential, it says home occupation. So is a commercial business in a home, I haven't found that link mentally in our whole discussion tonight between these next 2 that we might consider being in the code.
No,
In a
commercial's
residential-
already there.
Yeah.
I know the commercial's already in the zone.
Yep, commercial, and that code's written.
And
it's
right now,
commercial
there's
zone
people
only.
doing commercial in residential, maybe,
Maybe,
maybe.
yeah. But we're saying, we don't want commercial in the residential zone,
Okay,
but we may well allow self-employment in
okay,
the commercial.
And I think before we go too deep into that we need to do some research into what other communities and entities and state and federal definitions are of these, you know, self-employment, home occupation. Commercial's pretty clear, I don't think we need to go too much into that. But I think that there's a definition of self-employment and home occupation that maybe we're blurring the lines a little bit.
Well, and we'll be able to separate those two, but tonight we're looking at the top one, home occupation.
Yeah.
If we agree the other two are a separate entity, then we can go ahead and move forward with this one
Yeah.
based on the
it's-
phone.
Are we
It's
gonna
too
vote on this as
complicated.
it stands tonight?
I hope not.
No, I don't think so. I think that what we're doing is trying to get this wording down. And I've heard a couple people try and define this, but I don't see a definition in this. I see a purpose.
There is a definition in
There's a
another
definition
section.
in the definitions
Is there?
section
Yeah.
that says, home occupation, a non-residential activity conducted entirely within a dwelling unit, which is clearly incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling for residential purposes.
I've got to leave.
Okay.
What is that?
If we vote on it tonight, my vote would be
It's
against
not in
this
this
as
code.
it's written. But it would be for your three areas.
Okay, well, we already took that vote.
And
so we
so,
got clarification, I'm fine with the three.
clarification on the vote, Eric, so that means you would apply for one license
No.
in whichever one you fit for?
Right, that's correct. You will fit in one of those three categories,
Yeah, and
But-
you'd
Or
apply
you
for the
don't get a
permit or the
license.
or
license?
you don't, and then you're not
Right.
in one of those.
Uh-huh. But until we change the code, there's only two. We haven't defined the third one.
Yeah. And some of them have to have a state license and a license.
But we're not gonna shut anybody down until we,
We don't, we're not gonna go out,
Mark.
we're not gonna do this code and say, come out, now we're shutting it down.
No,
I'm not busy.
but I think that's time to start
We're just trying to turn the
discussing a
wheel.
renewal time.
one other comment, I
Well,
don't know that we,
Here's,
sorry, Eric.
here's the thing, we're talking about the home occupation, and I'll share this with you folks because you're part of the process. This is not what I go out and beat people up with. What I go out and beat people up with is a nuisance ordinance. It's defined from the state.
Yeah.
Our lawyer has no issues at all backing up the nuisance ordinance. If they don't wanna comply, they'll get cited with this, but they'll get cited with the nuisance ordinance. And that's what we beat people up with. It's not this document. The nuisance ordinance is what, dust, noise, smoke, and odor, those are definable. Those are defined in the state. That's what we beat people up with, not with this.
Can I complain about the gravel pit?
But we could, I mean,
You can.
but we, when I say beat up, I don't wanna use that, but I mean,
Because the state
you know,
thinks it's closed.
but we can.
Yes.
I mean, if that code's
You would-
violated, we can.
If you're going to court, you're gonna cite them on this, you're gonna cite them on the other, and we're going to court, and they're gonna, I mean, if you have to go, you have to go. And so, this is
But-
just another tool, but this is not the big tool.
But here's the thing, I think that we're being unfair to all of the residents by allowing people to do things outside of the code, and also being unfair by not defining what is allowed and letting people know, you know, if you want to do this, this is okay within these boundaries. And I think that's where we're missing out is, you know, that's the thing we could do to help the residents.
That's
You
why
know,
I was kind
do
of
business.
pushing
That's
Gary to
where
do
we're
them
at.
together.
Well, we're moving that direction.
And so, that's why I say, our code doesn't allow it at all right now. And that's what I tried to bring up in the public hearing as we're talking about it. You guys are all in violation right now, let's figure out what we need to do. And that's why I'd really like to get home occupation out of our mind, because we keep trying to mix it and it's not working.
No.
Yeah, as you guys discussed that, those things are very clear, there's three different things.
So can I ask you a question,
Yes.
Eric and Chip? When we do this, I don't know how to phrase my question.
Good, I don't got an answer.
Do we, well, I guess just, do we need to have more public hearings and all of this process again on this self-employed?
Yes.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
And I think we should. We're gonna go back to these folks that came to this, and we're gonna say, you know what, you guys don't fit. We're gonna write a new code, and this is, now what do we need to say?
Yeah,
Because they all tried to fit into this. All the comments we got was on this code, it was our red line.
they say, you don't fit anywhere right now and we're trying to see if
Okay,
it
but
makes
since
sense
we
to
know
make
that
it.
ahead of
Say that's
time,
smiling,
since we
you
know
don't
that
fit
ahead of time
anywhere.
they're not gonna fit, they're not gonna, I mean, they're not gonna wanna really budge what they're doing per se, and so we're gonna be in the same boat as soon as we start talking about self-employment, because they're.
Yeah, we are. You're right.
I just wonder what more we would learn by another public hearing.
Well, I don't know what we learned, but I think we have to have.
We
one.
have,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Well,
required.
you're gonna hear about nuisances, and they're gonna hear about nuisances and what they've gotta do so they don't become a nuisance.
And I think that's been covered.
And some of us, there's no hope of not being a nuisance, but, you know.
This was just in an effort to try to move this along a little bit, but.
Well, we did, we
what
made it
need
to three, we got to 3 sections now, that's
Woohoo!
kind of a big step to segregate
We
it.
got this email, I'd like to read this definition.
It was.
We got this email from Brad Allen, and I'd like to read this definition because I think it shortens the definition of the home occupation.
Who's Brad Allen?
He's that guy that's bought some property in our town and he's thinking of moving here.
Okay,
And he got a hold of the public hearing thing and he sent an email.
okay.
And here's his definition of the home occupation. If you can't perform the key service that generates revenue in the home, it is not a home occupation.
There you go.
That's tight.
It was pretty tight, yeah, I
That's
read
tight.
that, that's, yep. If it's not inside your house, it's not,
Yeah?
done.
Mhm. And I think we know there is a place in the town for home occupations. It's been provided in the past. How do we continue it in the best manner? And I think that's what we're trying to do by just clarifying this.
Okay.
And then we gotta move on to the next
That's
piece.
great. There's your home occupation right there. Has to be performed in the house.
Period. Done.
Period.
So he goes on down on definition and he actually has self-employed with size restriction in parentheses.
There you go.
Was
Do you want to just read it
or
quickly,
something
Eric,
like
or is
that.
it really long?
It, the whole, do you want the whole definition? He's written on, he just went down, home occupation business generally should be completely self-employed with the possibly only exception, including immediate family members living in the house.
For self-employed?
No, that's for,
That's
Home
all.
occupation.
home occupation.
Yeah.
He's saying that there should be, self-employed should have its own with a size restriction. Because it doesn't fit in the home occupation, it's his,
Yeah.
Does he suggest anything there on size?
he doesn't.
Okay.
So which Brad Allen is that?
He's a CPA, it looks like,
I think he's got
Yeah, he
some.
bought 5 acres.
Davis Allen.
Yeah.
His wife does hair, is a hair salon person, he says. in
They
the
bought
letter.
5 acres.
Yeah.
Wilds
See,
bought
Jim.
5, they bought 5 down there,
See,
kind of by the new elementary school.
yeah,
What's his name?
Brad Allen.
Brad Allen.
Oh, yeah, he lives over on the Heber side,
He does.
right behind the big
that little
barn that somebody
subdivision.
put up right in
Yeah,
front of his
Right in
backyard.
his view.
Yeah, so he bought, 5 acres on right beside Webb's.
Right.
Yeah, which,
The other side of the
To a bigger lot.
well, then he would block his view. Eric,
Well, so that's the opinion of an accountant.
Right,
What would you consider a housekeeping service? Housekeeping by Dawn has a home occupation business license.
they did.
She performs her work at
Sure.
other homes, not within
Self-employed.
I
her.
think she falls under the self-employed.
Yeah.
And the daycare followers, the ones the Webbs do, that falls under home
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 occupation.
occupation.
Because they're inside the house. Granted, there's a little more traffic, but they're inside, they're not outside, they do their gig, and then they go home.
That's a great definition, period, simple. It's there.
But I mean, obviously, as you guys talked, you could hear that self-employment was the, because they
I
were
bet
talking
that's
about.
coming right out of IRS code.
Yeah.
I bet it is.
Because he's a CPA.
Yeah, because that's
Probably
tax
is.
accounting.
We can't agree with, let's look for a new definition.
That's
Yeah.
So
Let's find a
is the
culprit.
plan to finish looking at this code and make changes to the home occupation code another night?
Yes.
To home occupation?
Yeah.
Well, I think if we've identified these, I think that we're ready to move on this. If anybody has any additions or corrections, is there anything anybody saw in this code that we looked at tonight that needed to be changed? Based on the fact that we are gonna look at a self-employed?
I saw some things, Eric, that just the wording of several of the things I think could be cleaned up.
Okay, do we wanna go over them quickly?
Sure, go.
Really?
Really?
Well, let's get it done. You said there was just a
Somebody
few.
mentioned that they wanted a joint
I agree, I just didn't want to overnight it.
No, we don't either.
But
Won't be the first.
I'll do whatever you want, Eric.
I think if it's not that substantial, I think we just hit it. and
The
give
things
these-
I have here are not substantial, but I think that wording is important.
Okay,
So, how should I do this?
just go right down.
Okay.
Start on
Tell us
seven.
where you're reading.
Can we have a goal, because I am going to leave at 9:30.